All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're actually taking a radically different path than usual. I want you to literally step into the shoes of a doomed seeker navigating a grim Gothic fable. We are going on a dark, incredibly immersive descent right into the very center of existential dread. And we'll be exploring some truly profound Nietzschean philosophy through this haunting narrative. So let's just dive straight into this fascinating and honestly pretty chilling concept known as the Great Evening. The frantic, amusing choreography of all human striving. Now, if you're a student deep in that relentless, high-pressure academic grind, this might hit a little too close to home. I mean, have you ever felt like your endless studying, the late nights, that constant exhausting push for the next grade is just kind of a tragic pantomime? Well, according to the texts we're exploring today, all of that frantic striving is ultimately destined for the absolute void. It's a super sobering thought for sure, but it perfectly sets the stage for our entire journey. So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding exactly where this journey leads, which is a place called the heart of negation. And this isn't just some empty space. It is the default baseline state and the ultimate destination of literally all existence. Think of me as your cryptic guide for this one. In this metaphysical site, three sibling architects reside. They're known as the wit, the hunger, and the small, and together they synthesize the weaponized truth of human futility. Let's descend into their domain and see exactly how this truth is synthesized across 7 really dark parables. Our descent actually begins with Parable 1, the primeval inkwell. See, before you ever built your first logical sanctuary, before you ever constructed a study plan or set a major life goal, there was the dominance of the absolute void. And here is where we meet the ink blot demon. But unlike most primordial entities, this demon is not a creator, not at all. Rather, it's a reservoir of existential determinism, just waiting to erase all of history with permanent oblivion. It is basically the inescapable ink into which all our stories eventually bleed. As we walk a bit deeper, we enter the hall of the first sibling architect, the wit. This brings us to Parable 2, the mirror maze. I want you to imagine stepping into this suffocating glass labyrinth. You're using your intellect, your logic, all your academic prowess to try and find a way out, but every single intellectual path you take just leads right back to a reflection of your own eyes. You literally cannot think your way out of this maze because your mind itself is the maze. Welcome to epistemological nihilism. It's this terrifying realization that human reason is not some guiding lamp illuminating the dark unknown, but an enclosed, totally self-referential trap. Right at the center of this maze stands the inquisitorial priest. Imagine him ringing bells with the cold, rhythmic cadence of an interrogation room. He is there for one reason: to prove that the human mind is nothing more than a beautifully tailored prison, endlessly and mercilessly prosecuting its own reflection. Escaping the maze, if you can call it escaping. Our doomed seeker arrives at the grand banquet of the Great Evening for Parable 3, the bottomless goblet. Here, the second sibling, the hunger, presides over everything. The hunger offers you a goblet, but it's filled not with wine, but with the toxic harvest of bitter truths. As a seeker of knowledge, of course you drink from it eagerly, right? You're hoping to finally understand the universe, hoping for ultimate enlightenment, or, at least to finally pass your finals. But the goblet is bottomless, and the drink itself is poison. You drink hoping to achieve the transcendent ambition of the Faustbuch Übermensch, this ultimate elevated human. But what you actually end up receiving is systemic spiritual bankruptcy and profound cynicism. If you've ever experienced severe student burnout, well, this is the philosophical extreme of that exact feeling. You realize that your endless pursuit of absolute power and forbidden knowledge doesn't elevate you at all. It merely feeds a blind, irrational cosmic engine. The more you consume, the emptier you become. But as you're stumbling through this journey, you might not have even noticed the microscopic shadow lurking right at the base of your spine. You might have just felt it as a random twitch of anxiety, a seemingly trivial burden that you've just learned to ignore while you push forward. But this shadow is actually the physical manifestation of the third sibling architect, the small. So, the small represents what Nietzsche called the spirits of gravity, the architect of your spirit's eventual grounding. And what does it do back there in the dark? It feeds. It feeds upon the dumping ground of the human ego. We're talking about all your repressed impulses, your hidden fears, your completely unexamined traumas. It just waits so patiently for your ambition to falter, growing heavier and heavier with every single suppressed doubt. As that weight really starts to grow, we shift the narrative to a grand stage for Parable 5, the sovereign script. Picture a magnificent king standing before his entire court. He's passionately making choices, issuing decrees, declaring his free will to be absolutely, unconditionally sovereign. He genuinely believes he is the undisputed master of his fate, the sole author of his own glorious story. But as the shadows lengthen, this illusion of sovereign free will is violently stripped away. Above him, cosmic puppet strings descend. All those grand assertions of human autonomy, turns out they are nothing more than a jester performing a predetermined script for an entirely indifferent audience. The universe pulls the strings, and we merely dance that frantic, amusing choreography, desperately convincing ourselves that we're the ones who chose the music. The seeker, finally realizing they have absolutely no control, looks up. This is Parable 6, the calcifying sky. I want you to imagine looking toward the horizon and watching the very air itself harden into solid stone. The atmosphere becomes heavy, unbreathable, totally frozen. This represents a sudden, absolutely crushing hyper-awareness of universal futility and stasis. The realization that nothing you do matters literally solidifies the world around you. Let's actually break down the anatomy of this dread for a second. First, the repressed trauma sits right at the spine. Second, the microscopic shadow of the small feeds on that dumping ground of the ego. And third, the terrifying climax. As the air calcifies, the shadow rips free and literally morphs into a 12-foot stone gargoyle. The psychological weight of Nietzschean dread has physically manifested. It becomes this massive monolith that violently crushes the human spirit under the immense, dense weight of its own unexamined ugliness. Defeated and totally crushed, the seeker faces Parable 7, the final spill. This is the ultimate Untergang. If we look at the philology here, the German root of this Nietzschean term literally translates to going under, or a final drowning descent. The three architects, the wit, the hunger, and the small, have fully done their jobs. They have broken the seeker's mind, spirit, and body. And now, they simply step aside. They part ways to let the ink blot negation complete its inevitable work. So, the question remains, was your drive for transcendence merely a parasitic obsession? Let the cold, analyzing voice of the ink blot demon just wash over you for a moment. Every late-night study session, every sacrificed weekend, every desperate grasp for academic or personal greatness, was it ever really about elevation? Or was it just a parasite in your mind forcing you to climb a ladder that was always leaning against a crumbling wall? And so, the end arrives. Those intellectual sanctuaries you built, completely dismantled. The absolute weight of gravity grounds you permanently. The ink blot spills across the landscape of your life, completely erasing the architecture of your ambitions and returning everything to the silent void. The tragic pantomime is permanently over. The great evening has officially fallen. We end our explainer today right here in the dominance of the absolute void. But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to chew on. Does understanding the sheer unavoidable futility of the great evening actually liberate you from those cosmic puppet strings? Does fully embracing the void free you from the burnout and that frantic choreography? Or does it simply prepare you for the inevitable? Thank you so much for joining me on this descent today. Let that question linger, and I'll catch you next time.